Hello, this is the perfect setup, guitar and bass. Squier versus Fender. What's the diff? Let's get started. There is hardware. The Affinity and Squier standard, you get a pretty thin, not nice piece of metal. The vintage modifieds, classic vibes, you get a pretty nice piece of metal. The thickness is good. Not quite as thick as the Americans and not quite as heavy, but it is thicker and heavier than the Mexicans. The tuners on the standards and the Affinity Squiers aren't very good. No, the vintage modifieds and the classic vibes, they're decent tuners. They're okay. They're not garbage. I think they're 15 turn, I believe. The frets on your standard on all your Squiers aren't very good. You'll have to polish them up more, clean them up more, and they'll wear sooner. You get okay frets with the Fender stuff. Wood, Affinity is alder, standard is agathis, vintage modifieds, basswood, classic vibes are either alder or pine if you get the butterscotch blonde coating. Mexican standard and the American standard, you get an alder body. Now, the American guitars, their wood is going to be naturally dried in a controlled environment where everybody else is going to kiln dry their wood and get them from who knows where. The coatings. Squier is all polyester bodies and necks. The Mexican standard, you get a polyester body and a urethane neck. The American standard, you get urethane coatings, body and neck. There's nitro options for Fender guitars, but those are options on Fender guitars. Now, the coating, like I said, is polyester on the Mexican, but it's quite thin. On the Squiers, it's quite thick. So the pickups, the standards, the Squier standards and the Affinity, you get a pretty weak, dull pickup. The vintage modified are Duncan designed, made in China, and the classic vibes are Fender designed, made in China. So they're a bit stronger, bit sweeter, but they still lack some sweetness and some strength. Same with the Mexicans, they lack a bit of sweetness and strength. I don't know how those two compare to each other. I've never been able to get them together. So, the American standard pickups, they're going to be okay. That's why I don't have an American guitar. Otherwise, I'd be changing stuff out anyways and spending more money. Playability. The Affinities and Squier standards, you can find some pretty awful ones. You can find some very, very small percentage of good playing Affinities and standards. The vintage modifieds and classic vibes, I've read of a couple of bad reviews, but it's hard to believe them. Are these people just spoiled with awesome stuff and hate on everything else? Who knows? But all the ones I've come across, and they play quite well, quite nicely. Yep. The Mexicans, you have to watch out for the Mexicans. 25-30% of them won't play well at all. 30-35% will play okay, and 30-35% will play quite well. So it's flip of the coin, I guess, or a three-sided coin. American Standard, it should feel like you spent over $1,000 on your guitar. I've come across a couple of Strats that I wasn't so happy with. I was kind of surprised on how those guitars left the factory. But other than that, they play quite well. Yep. None of them will play quite as well as a $2,000+ guitar, or as a vintage Fender, or say vintage Japanese Squier, or made in Korea Squier. Alright, those are my thoughts and views. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Cheers.